know, and especially if there's alcohol involved. And so my goal is to protect women, and also to make sure that men know that if they are causing harm, that, I mean, a lot of men, they don't want to hurt other people. They don't realize it. And so I think if we have better education about like what assault is and how to prevent it, because again, there are male victims. So I think if it's something that we can come forward about and make sure that everyone feels heard and supported, then men would also come forward more about like if they've been assaulted.
This doesn't answer my question though. My question is, when you cite the data on how many of these women have actually been assaulted, what is the criteria being used?
That's a good question. I see your point of how it varies, like based upon the study and things like that. But I think a lot of these problem is that it is self-reported. But again, another issue is that that means they could be underreported as well, because women are too scared to report it. So yes, there are issues with that. But another thing though is that women are definitely in a position in the home where they are not safe in a lot of places. And again, that comes back to the kind of assumption that I was talking about earlier, is that like it's because we married the wrong man and this guy is unsafe in our home. But it's not about that. It's sometimes when you marry somebody or you date somebody, they can then become violent towards you because they see you as their property almost.
Most of these domestic violence claims and things like this are happening from single mothers with boyfriends, though, not happening from the father at home.
Do you have
married
a source
relationships.
For that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. No, I'm just wondering because
not only is that factually the case, but interestingly enough, if the state seizes custody of a child inside of an abusive home, the child's actually more likely at the hands of the state to die than they are in the hands of the abusive home.
Crazy,
which is insane, but true.
That's crazy.
Now, let me give you the studies that you're talking about here.
Okay.
Okay.
Are these the studies about which claims that you said?
Yeah, so here we're going to start with the National Incidence Study, NIS. It's the largest collection of all types reporting data relating to abuse and maltreatment of children. Okay? 68% of maltreated children were maltreated by a female, whereas 48% were maltreated by a male. Some children were maltreated by both. Of children maltreated by biological parents, mothers maltreated the majority, 75%, where fathers maltreated a sizable majority, 43%. In contrast, male perpetrators were more common for children maltreated by non-biological parents or parents' partners, 64% or 75%. Safest place you can possibly be in the home is with your husband and with your children. That's for women, the safest place they can be. Any study that you pull up is going to be drawing from the NIS source. That's direct from the NIS itself. There's no refuting that. I've looked and looked and looked. It is definitely from partner incident violence. Women are the safest when they have a husband in the home.
I think for some women that is the case. I think there are good men out there, and I think that's a misconception that feminists don't believe in that there are good men.
And you know what's crazy? By that study, you can get to this conclusion that there's multiple conclusions to this. You can make the argument that feminists, right? They don't want to admit that maybe their decisions, the woman's decision in the future, most likely will not be to protect their kids. Because if you're now allowing somebody, stranger, that has no connection with your current kids from a ex-marriage or former marriage, you are not really making decisions for the well-being of your kids, because there's a highly likelihood, I don't know if that's the right word, that those kids might be SA. And even if you know that, you're still making this bad decision. That means that females by nature, when they make decisions, right, is in some instance like this study, they're making decisions against the kids' well-being majority of the time.
All men, which definitely isn't true, but I would like to say,
because
you're saying, psychology is an evolving field. There are different studies and different numbers. Male perpetrators are predominant, and while the exact percentage differs, it's generally estimated that between 75 and 90% of child sexual abuse is committed by men or male adolescents.
Nope. That's because it's not drawing from the correct data set, which would be the NIS.
But the reason
they do that
have the authority to say which one is the correct data set?
Because they all draw from the NIS. All of them draw from this data set, the NIS. They have to. It's the most comprehensive source for reporting. So here's what happens. If you wanted to gather data, you're a psychologist.
Are you seriously explaining to me how it works to gather data?
No, I'm asking you a question.
Oh, okay.
If you wanted to gather data.
Sign language.
Right?
Yes.
Well, that's all that she has. Sign language, guys. That's all she has.
Especially on crimes, you would use law enforcement or the best source for reporting, right? In this case, self-reporting is going to be far less reliable than reports to the police, things like this, right?
Yes, understandable. So you're saying that this is the most comprehensive, therefore the most
And make
reliable
sure you
source.
like the chat,
It's the most
like the video,
comprehensive
guys.
source.
But where are you finding
on
that
which-
it is the most comprehensive?
Like
Because
the
you
video.
haven't mentioned a source that says it is. Because I'm looking at it now.
The
and
NIS?
That's not from the NIS. There's the national.
It's from the NIS. From the NIS. Let me
There's
read
the
it to you
National Center
again.
for Victims of Crime in RAIN, which is the statistics that I just
RAIN
pulled
draws
up.
from the NIS.
Okay, so then how come it draws from the same source? And my conclusion is different than yours.
Because they changed the criteria for what is considered assault, and they changed the criteria. Like, I've seen it as bad as them saying that men cannot be essayed by women because it's non-penetrative.
I see.
Wow.
So you're saying that
It's
that would
crazy.
skew the numbers.
It does skew the numbers. So the results of the National Incident Study, NIS, the largest collection of all types of reported data related to abuse and maltreatment, 68% of maltreated children were maltreated by a female, 48% maltreated by a male.
Mm-hmm.
Women, when they're in positions of power over people who are weaker than them, actually abuse more than men do. So at the same time, while you say, well, women have to run this big gambit of threats from men because men are much stronger than women and have more propensity of violence, when women are in charge of people who are inferior in strength to them, their incidences of violence towards them are much higher than men's incidences of violence.
And we can see that in the politics. The mayor from Illinois, the Hanier lady. We can see this in Washington State and a lot of these places. I mean, when Letitia James, New York State, they're deliberately abusing their power, deliberately. And you know why they feel that they can abuse their power? Because men by nature will always feel some kind of empathy towards women. Always, for some reason. And this is the dangers of putting people in power. This is the dangers of putting female in power, because men, when they see that, they cannot understand it. We don't understand it, guys. We see it, we're trying to comprehend it, but we don't really understand it. So because we cannot understand it, it's very hard for us to just hold them accountable. The New Orleans mayor, there's a party in the street. I mean, we can go on and on and on. They abuse their power, especially judges.
Towards them.
That's
It
quite the
sounds like women
conclusion.
are the greater threat here than men.
Sure. If you want to say that, that's totally your prerogative, but that's not what the numbers say. So you can say, no, it's my turn to speak.
Yeah.
You can say what you
That was the numbers game. That means that she doesn't believe what she's saying. That's what the numbers say. She doesn't believe what she's saying.
on about all the different statistics and how they come from a specific study. But the point is that there are different estimates, and basically every study conducted globally has found that the number of female victims is astronomically higher than male victims. Not to say male victims aren't important. If you are a male victim, especially if you haven't spoken up, I have seen the effects of having male sexual assault in my family. So please, talk to somebody. It is serious. But 1 in 6 boys have been sexually assaulted, and a lot of the time it is by male offenders.
Yeah,
so it is
but
serious.
what about the fact
But
that
the
when
point
we're
is
talking
that
about
women
rages of
are
abuse
victims more.
of children, women are the ones who are most often in charge of children. The domestic rates, for instance, inside of a boys' home where the prison guards are all male, and it's a male, youth population versus female. If there's a females in charge of the youth population, the statistics for abuse skyrocket. Same thing inside of public schools.
Are you saying that women are more likely to be
women are more likely women are more likely than men when it comes to the weaker sex? In this case, children. We would just say children are both sexes, right? But they're the weaker human than women. When they're in charge of children, they actually abuse them far more than what men abuse women at. And so it's like, so who's really the dangerous ones here?
I mean,
your 60 seconds begins. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I would like to say that that is a claim that is a reasonable conclusion that you are drawing from the data that you are presenting. Unfortunately, that is not true, though. That the vast majority of sex offenders are male, and especially when there are still female offenders, and that is still bad.
Down, guys.
But the point is that there is significant male dominance, and that most sex offenders are male, and females do commit sex crimes, but they're often underrepresented as perpetrators. So you're correct.
No.
Data you're reporting, is it?
Do you want to continue?
Yes, please. And so...
You're 60.
Brian, bro. She finished her statement. She want to just give away her 60 seconds. She just gave it away. She just went through a lot of claims that are not true. We're talking about when females are the power. They tend to overuse it, guys. I mean, it's personal experience. That was very common. When you date lawyers and doctors, that's what they do. They have power, the money. They want to pay it. They want to pay you. They want to pay you to stay, guys. They tend to just overuse their power. And especially in these juvenile sentences, these guys have high testosterone. These kids have very high testosterone. Don't you think the woman... the fact that she just glanced over the study that Andrew presented, and she just gave it away as, what you're saying is not true, but do not correct me. It shows you that she's not here to just win the debate. She's just here to pretend. Again, like the last one, she's just here to pretend that she's good at debating, I guess.
This is from the United States Commission Sentencing, which is just about
Make
sexual
sure you
abuse offenders. And there's
the
a
video,
whole pie
guys.
chart here, about how many times they offend and who they offend and who they're under guidance for. And again, it is saying that the vast majority, up to 80% of the perpetrators, are men.
Yeah,
yeah, you can talk now.
So, women, do you agree with me that I have to ask some questions here so I can figure some things out? I hope that you'll answer them. So, do you agree with me that both men and women have the propensity to, in some way, essay the other partner, both of them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's, no, yes, I agree. It is definitely possible for both sexes to do that.
The question becomes, if you switch criteria around, right, for what is considered sexual assault, let's just assume things like catcalling are put in the category.
That's harassment. But are you saying hypothetically?
But let's say it's categorized, not as harassment, but as a form of sexual abuse. Would you say that would greatly skew the numbers?
If that were how it was classified, yes. Do you have evidence that is how it is classified?
I do. In fact, there's a whole grouping of colleges in a study that I can show you where that was smuggled in as a form of sexual assault or SA or sexual battery in some cases, right? They smuggle in, and so what they do is they decide that they want to make that data set wider. And so they just reclassify things which would not ordinarily be classified as sexual assault or sexual battery by just inserting those things. Now, the same exact thing happens here. Do you think that it's very masculine, for instance, inside of society, for men to go and report when a woman gives them unwanted touching?
No. And matter of fact, I do know male victims with female perpetrators.
And they have unwanted touching?
Yes.
So they're just far more likely to report it because of the social stigma, which happens to them often from women who tell them things like, I don't consider you a real man like you did to me earlier.
Oh,
got you.
I didn't really say that, but
you did.
Yeah, you did.
She
just did. She just did. You're not a real man like my dad. That's what she said. Whatever that means. We don't know her dad, so I don't know what she's saying. Like a real man.
Or a real man would X.
Oh yeah, like real men like my dad who have the same political beliefs but don't talk to women the way you do.
Yeah, whatever that means. But anyway,
so
a real man does X, right? Wouldn't you say that the social stigma around the fact that women can kind of get away with the same type of inappropriate touching without men reporting would greatly skew these numbers?
Yes, however, I think that women and men who are victims and are perpetrators as well, I think those are both underreported. I think across the board it's underreported, but more for male victims with female perpetrators.
Well, how many more for male victims?
I don't know.
But it could be drastic, right?
And I would hope not.
And if it is drastic, then it would skew your numbers on all of those percentages across the board.
Oh, absolutely
it
would. But the problem is we have no way of gathering that data. And with the data we do have, though, I see what you're saying about the stigma, but it is so vastly that women are victims and men are the perpetrators that I don't see that catching up in any percentage.
Why not? It depends on how underreported it is. In fact, a lot of these data sets draw from unreported incidences via estimates, don't they?
Unreported incidences via estimates.
Yes. So
I suppose, there's no way that they can actually gather that data. Yeah.
Yeah. So this would be the exact same thing, right? They're making a supposition based on an estimate. This would equally have to apply to men. But if the social stigma is there by your own admission that men are basically not reporting the instances of unwanted touching from women due to this social stigma, we don't.
We don't do it because a lot of guys don't even know that that's the case. Probably she walked by and touched, his buduku, and all of a sudden, he's like, oh man, she touched me. At least I got touched at least once. I'm not saying that's okay, but for guys, that might be what goes through their mind. They don't even realize that they just got touched.